Good evening. So tonight we'll be covering Aseret hadibrot, dibra 2, part 3. So just to recap what we covered last night, that we are not allowed to worship or believe in any other gods except Hashem, besides Hashem. All right? So the next part of this dibra, of this commandment, is Lo tishtachave lahem, do not bow down to the idols, to them, the idols. Velo ta'ov them, do not worship them. Ki anochi Hashem Elokecha, because I am your Hashem, your God. Kel el kana, I am a jealous God. I'm an exclusive God, a jealous God. Poket avon avot al banim, and I keep in mind the sins of the fathers for their children. Al shileshim ve'al rive'im lesonai, and for the third generation and fourth generation for my enemies. So Hashem is telling us there's no avodah zarah allowed, no bowing down, no worshipping, no partnership. Hashem does not need a partner. Hashem has all the power and he does it all on his own. Hashem does not need a power. We cannot say, okay, I believe in Hashem, but also believe in this, which actually it did happen during the times of the Melachim, of the kings. There was a period where Ben Israel were actually worshipping Hashem, but also worshipping at the same time, they were worshipping the avodah zarah, the idols. Hashem says, you cannot do that. And now there's no sharing. I don't have a partner, I don't have a shotef, and I don't want to share anything. In the times of Bet HaMikdash and the Mishkan, the Kohen used to do different kinds of services, right? There were different steps in the service. They would take an animal, had to be slaughtered, then skinned, then cut up, salted, put in onto the mizbeach, on the altar. And before they even skinned it, as soon as they did the slaughtering, they would collect the blood. The blood was sprinkled either on the parochet, the curtain that was between the parochet that covered the entrance to the inside of the Bet HaMikdash, Kodesh HaKodashim, or that some of the blood was sprinkled sometimes in the corners, sometimes on the side of the altar of the mizbeach, sometimes in the corners, sometimes water, sometimes wine, as we do on Sukkot, water and wine. And the bowing down is part of the prayers, and obviously prayers. All these steps, all that we do to worship Hashem, Hashem says none of it is allowed to be done for the avodah zarah. Now there were especially in the olden days, they used to worship avodah zarah, but they had very strange customs when they would be worshipping the avodah zarah. So like sometimes they would be throwing stones, sometimes they would do all kinds of really disrespectful, disgraceful acts in front of the avodah zarah. All of that. Hashem says, don't think that because you're doing things like this that are disgraceful, that it is allowed to do. It is not allowed to do. Whether it's done respectfully or disrespectfully, none of it is actually allowed. But what about if we are forced to do avodah zarah? It's not that we are willing to, but we are forced. As we have learned, unfortunately, in history, especially it was mostly among the Ashkenaz communities where priests and soldiers would come in huge number groups, and they were armed, they had swords, and they would sometimes even burn the people if they refused to convert. They would tell them either convert or we kill you. Most people decided to die and not to agree to convert. Sometimes they were drowned, sometimes they were killed, sometimes they were burnt, and just as it happened in Spain in the Inquisition, right? That many of them left the country, or many of them were actually burnt, and some of them pretended to do it, which is not really the best. But we're not here to judge these people. We're simply learning about what the Torah is asking of us. Actually, the Torah is telling us there are 3 commandments that the Torah is asking us to give up our life and not to transgress and not to break these commandments. The first one is, if we are forced to do avodah zarah, to serve idols, so either it's better for us to give up our life and not serve the idols. Number 2 is to kill someone, like someone is standing with a gun or a knife and tell us, kill him or kill her, or else I'll kill you. Same thing, we're not allowed to kill that person. And gilui arayot. Gilui arayot involves getting married with a non-Jew, or getting married in a marriage that is not allowed, that is forbidden according to the Torah. So throughout the ages, we know that there were many, many, many Jews who died, what we call on Al Kiddush Hashem. They said, no, I would rather die and not transgress this mitzvah. And they gave up their life. We know that the Torah appreciates very much life. As David HaMelech said in Tehillim, Kol HaNeshama Te'alel Ya. Every neshama, it means everyone that is alive. As long as a person is alive, a person can praise Hashem. Once a person is dead, that's it. There's no opportunity to praise Hashem. There's no opportunity to serve Hashem, to do mitzvot. It means that life is sacred. Life is so important to us. But there are 3 cases, and we just learned, we may not prefer life. That is, to convert, to kill someone, shefichut damim, and to gilui arayot, marry out, or meaning marry to a non-Jew, marry a non-Jew, and or marry someone that the Torah forbids us to get married to. And Hashem says, I am a jealous God. Anochi El Kana, I'm jealous. I will not forgive you if you worship other gods. I won't forgive you. I keep in mind the sins of the fathers for their children. Poket avon avot al banim. And that case, what does this mean that Hashem is jealous? So since Hashem gave us the Torah, and we accept it, right? We accepted to receive the Torah. We became His nation. Hashem said, okay, so you're going to be mine. right? You're going to be my nation. So just as a man might be jealous when his wife speaks to other men, so too Hashem is jealous when Bnei Israel worship idols, other gods. Hashem demands from us all of our being, everything that is us, represents us, every individual of us, every Jew. And that means in the present and in the future. Whatever our actions are, Hashem says, you are mine. So therefore you cannot serve any other God. The act of bowing down to an idol goes as far as, for example, someone has a little rock, a little pebble in his shoe. Let's say I have a little pebble in my shoe, and I bend down to take off my shoe, shake off whatever is inside, and put it back on my foot. But let's say there is an idol right there in front of me. Let's say I'm standing in a square, in a park, and there's an idol. And we know that this is not just a horse. This is something that, or a cross, or this is a religious symbol that represents Avodah Zarah. I have to be very careful. So what shall I do? I have that pebble in my foot. It hurts. I can't walk. I sit down. Sit down on the floor and then do it. But don't bend down. If you remember, a couple of lessons ago, I told you a story about that police officer in Yerushalayim who was told to go to the priest, to the monastery, and he realized that there was a cross down the stairs and the entranceway was very low, and for him to go in he would have had to really bend down. He realized he would be bowing down to the cross. And if you remember, I told you the story that what did he do? He turned around and went down backwards. Of course, this made the priest very, very angry, right? But he did the right thing. He really did the right thing by doing it this way. And that's how he saved himself from actually bowing down to the cross. In practice, there are a couple more things that we need to know. We should really avoid going through places where there is in Avodah Zarah, there's, let's say, a big cross someplace, right? Or a big statue, and we know that this is a known statue for Avodah Zarah. So we do need to be careful. Either cross the street to the other side of the street, or try maybe to avoid the street. Sometimes we may see a priest who wears a huge cross, right? He's coming our way. And so what do? Nothing. We just go straight. We try not to stare. We try not to bow down our head as a sign of respect, because otherwise it would look as if we are bowing down to the cross. There's actually a little story, interesting story about Yitzhak HaTzadik. Yitzhak HaTzadik was a man who was always very, very, very careful not to walk down the street if there was a church, or if there was a cross outside on the street or anything like this. He was very careful not to go through that street. All his life, he was very, very, very careful. And in his old age, he lived a very pure life. In his old age, he kept on doing it, very, very, very careful, till the day he died. The day he died, everyone came out. Everyone wanted to pay respect to this man who was a real tzaddik, who his entire life had always been very helpful and very careful, always learning and never hurting anyone and never doing anything wrong. But the Chevra Kadisha, they had a problem. They put his coffin on the wagon, pulled by horses, and they were saying to themselves, okay, what are we going to do? We know that all his life he was very careful not to go through places where there were crosses or churches, but to get out of the city, there was a wall around the city. To get out of the city, on the wall of the city, there were crosses. So what are we going to do? They still were debating what to do, what's going to happen. And they were walking and walking. People were walking behind the wagon. And suddenly, part of the wall crumbled. It just crumbled. It just broke away, broke down. The horses on their own turned, went through that opening, through that breach, and they were able to get back on their own. They were able to get back onto the main road to go to the cemetery. People just could not believe what had happened. This was a miracle. This was really a miracle. This man had been so careful during his lifetime. Hashem protected him even after his death. After his death, Hashem protected him so he should not have to go through a place where there was a cross, where there was a religious symbol. Chachamim teach us that there is actually a blessing, a beracha to say when we see a place of idol worshipping and this place has been destroyed. So the beracha is Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam Sherakar Avodah Zara Mehamakom Hazeh. Bless you Hashem that you uprooted, you removed. It's not just removing. To uproot is to actually really destroy completely the Avodah Zara, the idol worshipping from this place. Keshem she'akata otam me'amakom hazeh, just as you have removed, uprooted Avodah Zara from this place, ken ta'akor otam mikol ha'mekomot. So too, you should, Hashem, remove this Avodah Zara from all places. V'hashev lev avadehem le'ovdecha, and bring the heart of those who worship the Avodah Zarah, bring it to serve you. This is the beracha we see in Chutz La'aretz. It means anywhere in the world. If this happens in Eretz Yisrael, then the beracha is slightly different and is Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam She'akar Avodah Zara me'artzenu. The Hashem has uprooted Avodah Zara, the worshipping of the idol, from our land. Keshem she'akarta ota me'artzenu, just as you have uprooted the Avodah Zara, the worshipping of the idol from our land. Ken ta'akor ota mikol ha'mekomot. So too, you should remove it from all our places in the land. V'hashev lev avdehem le'avadecha. That's the same as the last part is the same as the previous bracha, that Hashem should bring the heart of those who worship the Avodah Zarah to serve Him, to worship Him instead. So, tomorrow we'll be learning Be'ezrat Hashem about the meaning of Avon Avot Al Banim. That Hashem remembers the sins of the fathers for their sons. So in the zechut of this learning, may Hashem guide us and protect us and bless us with bracha, hatzlacha, parnasa tova, beriut, simcha, nachat, and zivugim. Good night.